Hello and welcome. This is so lovely to meet all of you here. And if you are, this is the first time you're meeting me. My name is Meenakshi Iyer, and I serve as a personal agility, self leadership, and change leadership coach. And my focus is on working with mid level leaders and women in tech, particularly. And that's why today is a bit of a queasy day for me. International Women's Day. I honestly, I don't know about you, but I can't wait for it to be not a thing. And I've been feeling like this for the past 3, 4 years, particularly because, when I think about it, I am a woman all days of the year. Yes, lovely to have one day to celebrate me or commemorate my accomplishments and what I bring to the world. But does that really solve all of the issues that we are faced with? The systemic barriers to showing up and doing our best work in this world? I'm not so sure. So, starting this International Women's Day, I want to make some noise about that. And I want to bring in different perspectives, starting with that of an ally. And that's what we are here to do today. But before we get started, I'd love to hear from you where you're joining us from. So please put it in the chat. And those of you who are not able to join us live, we hope that you will watch the replay. And we thank you for your time for doing that as well. And our hope really is to spark a different conversation, a conversation that is inclusive, and where we are not pitting ourselves against men or against the rest of the world. Rather, we focus on how can we co-create a gender equal world, a world where the gender equity is a given, and how might we do that by working alongside with allies. So that's what we hope that this conversation will spark for you. And I could not be happier and more excited to have one of my own very strong allies join me in this conversation. And that's our special guest, Sriharsha, who's joining us live from London. Thank you so much for being here, Sri.
Hello, happy International Women's Day to you, Meenakshi, and of course all the incredible women out there. Thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely, and thank you. So Shri and I go back a few years. We first met about 4 years ago in the virtual world, and we have a lot in common. We are both agile practitioners, professional coaches. We share a common cultural heritage. We are both expats. I live in the US and Shri lives in the UK, but we're both originally from the southern part of India. And ever since we met, we have been proudly serving as each other's critics and cheerleaders in all the endeavors that we undertake. So I still remember when I first set up North Star Solutions and Services, I set up the website. Sri, you were one of the first people I sent it out to asking for feedback. So that's just one of the few things that I know you've helped me with. And I know that community building is also another thing that we both share in common. And you were one of the speakers in my first ever virtual conference on the world of work that I held back in 2020. So that's how we have built this relationship and this collaboration and this friendship, literally across the pond. And we finally had the opportunity to meet in person a few months ago, and that's absolutely wonderful. And I'm looking forward to doing that again in just a few weeks. So more to come on that. I Before we dig deep into the conversation, I do have some questions for you, Shri. Before we get into that, I'd love to for you to introduce yourself a little bit in detail. Just tell us where you are, what you do, and how you got to doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Thank you. So I'm going to start this by stating this quote from a famous Russian American author in Rand. She did it in mid 20th century, but the quote is, the question isn't who's going to let me, it is who's going to stop me. Think about it while we chat around this today in our conversation. All right. I'm Sriharsha, fondly known as Shri in this part of the world. Well, I take pride in calling myself an agile caretaker. Um, the reason I say that is because agile for me is beyond 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., right? It is the way of life. That's how I see it. I work in a bank as an enterprise agility coach, transforming the bank to into agile ways of working. I have been active on a few agile communities. I'm also a co-founder of a group called as APGI. Sorry, I'm kind of hearing my own voice. Meenakshi, you can still hear me, I'm
Yes, we're
assuming.
good.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, sorry, I just got some feedback. Um, sorry, as I said, I'm a co-founder of an agile group in India called as APGI, which is Agile Practitioners Group of India. We'll talk more about that as well. I'm an accredited expert business agility coach from Business Agility Academy, right? So these are just for my LinkedIn, really. For me, it is all about mindset to change, to embrace the change, and in a given environment of change, how do you embrace it? That counts. That's for me. As Meenakshi mentioned, I live in the UK, London, with my wife and a 14-year-old son. Did I talk about embracing the change just now? I have a 14-year-old son that can really be embracing the change. That's my first, um, you know, uh, my first experience of embracing a change at home. Did I again? That's one of them.
I'm sure
Now,
all parents out there can relate to that.
isn't it? Yeah, each person has their own experience, which is what we're going to talk anyways.
Yeah,
Well, I speak at conferences, podcasts like these, and kind of write some agile blogs, leadership blogs to share my experience to the world, really.
yeah.
And yeah, this is my introduction. Again, thank you for inviting me to this special episode. I feel honored to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely, Sri. Thank you so much. And I know we had been talking about the upcoming APGI event, and that's how this came about. Because it was around the same time that I'd been thinking um, ab- about making public how I feel about this day. And our conversations kind of inspired me to create this space. And I'm so glad that it all worked out and that you're here today to have this conversation. Um, and as I was thinking about today, I also realized that Hindus all over the world are celebrating Mahashivratri today. And I thought how relevant, how timely that we are having this conversation, and that it is International Women's Day. So, for those of you who are not familiar with it, you can of course look it up, Google up Mahashivaratri, which is the Lord Shiva is the Hindu deity of constructive destruction, and his consort is Parvati. So the whole idea, to me, the ancient Hindu concept of Ardhanarishwara is one of the cornerstones of how I look at leadership and how the work that I do in support of women leaders, particularly in the world of tech, is that um, this idea that masculine and feminine energies reside in all of us, regardless of our gender, and that over years and years of conditioning, we tend to see women behave a certain way and men behave a certain way. And then we also have all the other, in the context of gender inclusivity, we have everything in between. But we are so used to certain models of actions and behaviors based on what we know to be a fact. But the real thing is that all of us have masculine and feminine energies inside of us. And I actually want to read something. I was looking up about the concept of Ardhanarishwara, and something that I wanted to share is that when you look at the physical form of Ardhanarishwara, uh, you'll see the male or the Shiva on the right if you're looking at the image, and Parvati or the Shakti on the left. And one interpretation of this is that our heart, the human body, is on the left, and so that's where the caring side of uh, the divine is located, and all of the doing is on the, all of the cognitive side of things is on the right. So that's one interpretation, and that really speaks to me. And so one of the first questions I had that I wanted to bring up to you, Shri, is, when you think about as an agile practitioner, and when you think about leadership, women leadership, agile practices, what are some parallels that you see between agile principles and practices and the feminine aspect of leadership?
Yeah, I mean, you almost stole my story there by explaining the. I mean, I didn't know this, to be honest. The analogy of Ardhanarishwara, which I think it came out very timely today. But yeah, coming back to the question again, it's a great question, because when you say agile principles and feminine side of leadership, if I have to draw parallels, I'll probably step back a little bit and I'd probably touch upon a concept called Ubuntu, right? So Ubuntu is nothing but I am because we are. That's an African concept, and
Mm,
that's revolving around human virtues. I'll try and connect this. So human virtues, right? So we talk a lot about human virtues, but when we get into the actual usage of these virtues, I don't think we really use them to the ability that we have, right? So, human virtues, especially virtues of the people who are in the leadership roles, are more or less the same. And how would women fit into these is something which I'm going to kind of draw parallels. Hopefully, that should answer the question. So, as you rightly touched upon with the analogy of Ardhanarishwara, the empathy, right? This is something which I also consider as an agile value, and also consider as a value that the feminine side of all of us, we all have it. But
mhm,
do we really bring that onto the table? Not many. But this is where I see there is a parallel kind of a linkage between
mm,
the agile value and the feminine side of leadership, or feminine side of not just leadership, right? So any role. And the second thing, what I can think of is communication, right? So that is something which again is something, but that's how I consider women are often strong communicators, right? I'm not comparing them to any other genders. All I'm saying is women are often strong communicators. They're able to convey their insights, ideas, and inspire others to their actions, right? So this is something again which aligns with agile values and principles. Now, the
mm,
third thing which I see is intuition, right? The intuition, again, this my by my own experience, um, women who are in these leadership roles, the intuitions, more often than not, you have these intuitions working for them, and that, for me, as keeping it simple and logical, aligns with one of those agile principles and values. I mean, I can keep talking about these, but essentially, why I can draw these parallel lines between the feminine side of leadership or feminine side of roles to agile values is because women bring in a unique perspective and set of skills to agile
mm,
teams, right?
mm,
Helping them. We talk about innovation, technology, creativity, and all those kind of things when we talk about agile teams. But what we also need to talk about is how women can bring in these unique perspective and the set of skills into these teams to foster these innovation and creativity.
Mm. Love that. And I love how you called out three key aspects: empathy, communication, and intuition. And those are some of the parallels that you see between agile principles and practices and the feminine aspect of leadership. Um, and I also wanted to, and I should have done that at the before I asked you the question. For anybody that's watching or that will watch this and is unfamiliar with what agile is, would you mind just sharing like a definition of what agile is,
Oh,
practices and principles?
okay. Do we have enough time to do that? No, I'm just kidding. Because, well, agile in a simple layman's term is adaptability and mindset and how quickly you embrace the change. When I introduced myself, that's exactly what I said. How nimble you are in order to adapt yourselves to the new environment and run with it, right? So you
Mm,
can't get stuck in the same position just because you did the same thing for the last 30 years and say, oh, this has worked for me for the last 30 years and I'm going to stick my stand here.
mm,
Well, the world's moving forward, they're moving very fast, and if you have to catch up with the world, with your competitors in the workplace scenario, then you really have to find your ways in order to be more lean,
mm,
eliminate waste from the system,
mm,
and try and deliver something faster. That's in your office setup. But at home, it is think about how quickly can you do some things without involving a lot of waste in this decision making
mm.
approach. That's agile for me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And to add to that, the in the context that Shri and I are talking about this, the Agile Manifesto, as it's referred to, originated what 23 years ago now, and um, it started off in the software development world, in the technology world, and over the past few years, and particularly in the last couple of years, it's really people across industries and across functions are seeing the value of of doing work using the agile principles and practices. And so it's not uncommon for us to hear about agile in HR, agile in marketing, agile in finance. So what started in the software development world, which again are based on fundamental core human values, and how that has evolved to what we're seeing today. And as you were sharing that, Shri, especially around adaptability and change, what struck me is, how our whole perspective today of rewriting the International Women's Day narrative is, in a way, it's a sense and respond type of
Mm,
scenario, because um, women make for 50% of the world's population around the world, and yet when you look at access to opportunity, labor participation rates around the world, and some of those systemic challenges, those things have not changed in the tens of years that this day has been celebrated. And so I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to do this and use our respective platforms to talk about this. So thank you for that. The next question that I wanted to dig into is really from your perspective as an ally. And see, this is something I've noticed and I've struggled with for a long time, that when we talk about inclusion, but then for inclusion to become a thing, the path to inclusion somehow tends to be exclusionary. What I mean by that is like women's groups, women's this, women's that, and for the longest time I struggled with that whole idea. And I remember having this conversation. So I'm part of a women's group, professional networking group called Lean and Agile. And I
mhm.
remember talking to we have two co-founders, and I remember talking to Leila, one of the co-founders, and um, she helped me see this side that, if I were to make this an open group, um, men tend to have so many forums and better access than us as women. That's one of the reasons why it's important for me to have this as a women's only forum. Like, we
Mm.
invite allies to our meetings and events, but in terms of speakers and in terms of panelists and things like that, we are very particular about having only women. And I struggled with that. So it's been a journey for me to really come to terms with this. Okay, how does inclusion really work? So, and today I'm at a point where I think that the path to inclusion is really through intentional collaboration. And it is important for us to bring our allies together, doesn't matter what gender they are, so that we can really get cracking on this long overdue agenda together, right? So, in that context, I want to hear from you, your perspective as an ally. It's sort of like a three-part question. So
Mhm.
the first question in that is, you know, talk about the top two or three barriers that you see from an ally's perspective that women face at work, in leadership roles, and then I have a couple of follow-up questions to that.
Sure. I mean, again, a brilliant question. But before answering this, I would want to give that little shout out to you to have consistently pursued on bringing this initiative forward. I know back in the day, when you started, there were a lot of challenges. Don't get me wrong, you still have those, but the way you've overcome those, and you're still putting up a great show. It's not just about one person doing this. It is about you inspiring a million other women within the community to come up to these and to possibly even start their own, right? So that's how the community works. So
Hmm.
big kudos to you, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Now, answering to your question, in terms of barriers, in terms of blockers where women would have, uh, before going into the leadership, or before going into women in leadership, what kind of barriers they have, I'd probably touch upon in general, when you have a working woman. So you may have some family responsibilities that will force you to take a break,
Hmm.
and you may have some personal development things going on which you need time off, and you need a break of your work. Health reasons, again, another big thing that can really put a stop or a break in a woman's career, and many more, travel and many more, of a family, etc., etc. So having these, I mean, having overcome these barriers when a person comes into the workplace, the top three, again, I'll probably choose, the first one being the gender bias and discrimination.
Hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense in the
Hmm.
workplace, because don't get me wrong, again, it is improving now. It is much, much better than what when you and I started getting into IT, and predominantly these project manager roles, and any roles above the project manager to the leadership CXO roles. Women often face these bias and discrimination, especially in leadership roles now. Yeah, but with the stereotypes, right, and some prejudice, both in terms of perception of their abilities, and the opportunities for advancements. So that's something which I rate as top one. And the
Hmm.
second one is probably the work-life balance, with COVID coming in and hybrid working, and of course now people are getting back to the office, etc. The work-life balance kind of, um, women may be expected to juggle around the caregiving responsibilities and some professional role responsibilities beyond their work timings. So this can be, again, some kind of a barrier as well. And um, I wouldn't say more of culture norms, but I would say lack of role models, if I can put it that way.
Hmm.
So, lack of role models. Why I say that? There's no visible, successful female leaders for me to look up to, right? So maybe now they are, right? So all I'm saying is the world's evolved, the world's come a long way, but this is back in time. Women didn't have anybody to look up to
Mm,
in those lead positions, in those CXO positions, for them to think, okay, if I can pursue, if I can be focused, I can be there one day, right? So
mm,
essentially, these probably I caught. There are many more. Your
mm,
confidence, your lack
mm,
of self confidence, all these things can play a big part in this as a
mm,
barrier for your own selves. But these are the three things which I call out.
mm. Thank you for sharing that. And so I heard you talk about gender bias and unconscious bias and gender-based discrimination, challenges with keeping up work-life balance, and it's also around primarily due to caregiving responsibilities,
Yeah.
and then lack of role models. Yeah. So um, what came up for me is that as you talked about, particularly around work-life balance and the lack of role models, and I started thinking about, what's the first woman that I can think of, particularly an Indian woman, or of Indian origin. And there's like these two, three names that come up, and that's it. Like Indira Nui was the first name that popped up for me.
Hmm.
um, and then Kiran Mojumdar Shaw. So there's like two, three names, and that's it. And what struck me, and something I read recently, is that it's not that okay. One, there is always this concept of if you can see her, you can be her. If you see yourself reflected, then you know that okay, you know what's possible, and then you are able to then aspire for it.
Right.
So definitely, in when I look back at my career, I would agree that I didn't see a lot of women in leadership roles, and even if they were, um, I don't think they enjoyed the kind of autonomy that male leaders had in the same roles or were paid. So pay equity is a whole nother issue, right? But something that I read recently is women don't also get talked about as often. That's why they are not in our collective consciousness. And and to me, that stayed with me a lot. And then I started thinking about, okay, in my own, when I start, if I want to think about, oh, can I name five women in tech, for example? And if you go back all the way, like hundreds of 100 years also, you have a lot of women who have done phenomenal work, particularly in the STEM space and in the tech space.
Correct.
But they are almost like erased from our history, and they don't get talked about. And so, to me, one takeaway that's coming up for me from this conversation is making a conscious effort to talk about women from history, from contemporary times, and to really put the spotlight on women and their achievements so that they, like 5 years from now, or even next year, I am
Yeah.
able to actually rattle off 10 names of women leaders. Yeah. So that's what I'm walking away with from what you shared.
Exactly. I mean, there's one more point before we close off this
Hmm.
particular topic. So, I mean, before I started introducing myself, I did quote um, from a famous Russian American
Okay.
author that really resonated with me. For example, to the condition back then, 1905, I'm really talking about a long time ago. The question isn't who's going to let me, it is who's going to stop me.
Yeah.
So you see the mind shift change there back
Yes.
then, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
there can be many blockers like that coming your way. I
Mm,
mean, to even say you don't have enough support network to support you, that can
mm,
be a potential blocker. Even if you're in a workspace, even if you're in a leadership role, you might need some kind of a support network to help you build that self confidence to say, no, I'm going after it, let me see who's going to stop this, right?
right.
So
Right.
to get that, you need that support network somewhere somehow, and that will put you in a driver's seat
Mm.
at any given point of time in your career.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, I've read that quote before, and I totally glossed over it when we got into the conversation and all the excitement. But that's a powerful quote, and also because of my focus on self leadership, it is something that resonates with me immensely. So I'm so glad you shared that. I just want to take a moment to welcome anyone that's just joined us. And if you're watching the replay a little bit later, and if you're still here, thank you so much for your time. And anyone that's joined us, hop in the chat and let us know where you are joining us from, and if you have any questions for Shri and I. We are talking about women and agile leadership and allies perspective, and this is our attempt to rewrite the narrative of International Women's Day. So, carrying on with our conversation, the second question that I had, piggybacking off of the first one, is what do you see as an ally? How can you support us women in overcoming some of these barriers that you talked about?
Yeah, yeah. So, um, well, see, I mean, eventually, all that you and I are doing today is to give it back to the community, right? So, I see the way I might help as an ally is to mentor a few women. So just to say, if they had a mid career break and they're coming in, they're coming back in again with low confidence or any such things. Maybe there are 100 other things that can come out, but you as a mentor, perhaps even a coaching session or two can really bring them on or to help them think more deeper than they what they would have thought otherwise,
Mm,
just to help them realize their own potential, really, which is what coaching is all about. And mentoring is slightly different, where we let them realize their strengths one, but we also tell them what's good in a given situation. Whereas
mm,
when we start helping them as a coach, you will help them realize their potential, and they will discover what's probably halted for that long, and now they want to resurrect those virtues, those characteristics, those traits back into their way of life, be it workplace, be it professional, be it personal, so that they can be successful in all that they want to be, right?
mm,
So mentoring, coaching, as an amigo, which is what I go by. As an amigo, I can always be there as um, as an extra ear or a fresh pair of eyes, if they really want me to look into something that they are
mm,
presenting into somebody, to sell themselves. And I can really be that for them.
mm.
Yeah.
And I know you've done that. You've helped out some of the women in my own network. Some of my clients do that as well. Um, and and I know the impact that mentorship and coaching can have on career advancement and development. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything else you'd like to add before we move on to the next question?
um, Uh, no, especially when it comes to me helping them, right? So it's obviously with our day jobs and stuff like that, we will also have to kind of balance that little work life, and of course with the time, all I want to do is to make sure that we have that stereotype break, that break in their mind, to say, okay, I'm confident now, Sri. I've had a chat with you for 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever the case may be. I think I know the path to go. So
Hmm.
that indirectly or directly builds that confidence to them. Going back to that quote, let me see who's going to stop me. That kind
Mm,
of, all you need is that attitude towards going into pursuing something in your career, be it leadership position or any positions for that matter, for a woman.
mm, absolutely. Thank you. And as we start to wrap up this segment of our conversation, I wanted to ask you, what is it that we as women can do to help allies like you help us? what are we not doing yet? How can we better leverage allyship?
Yeah, yeah. So that's slightly a tricky question for me, but I'll still take a stab at it. Okay, so essentially, when people, I've met a lot of women like this. They usually they hesitate to come forward to explain, to be vulnerable. I understand these would not just come up in your first meet, second meet. It requires time for you to build that relationship with the person in order to open yourselves up, to say, to become more vulnerable. All right. So that takes time. But essentially, when the mentees approach me, all I say is take your time and be as open as you can, because this is a conversation that you and I are having, and in between these walls it's not going to go out. So it is a very confidential conversation. So just be as open as you could, because if you do that, all I'm going to do is, as you rightly said, help me to help you become a better professional, whether it's at workplace, anywhere else. Just make sure you put yourselves in that vulnerable position to be open with people like us. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult for you to mentor somebody with half known information about the person, right? Coaching,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can still argue, but even in coaching, the way you are being coached will eventually bring everything out of you. It is just about matter of you discovering yourselves, which means you will have to go dig deep and touch that rock bottom. But especially when it comes to mentoring, you got to really be honest and say, this is what's troubling me, or I don't know what's troubling me. Can we dig deep and understand? I'll need
Mm-hmm.
probably more coaching. So being that vulnerable, transparent, and honest with your mentors, coaches would massively help them to lay a path for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you shared that, what I'd like to add to that is being intentional in what I call the recruiting your personal board of directors, really reaching out. And I know networking as a term is feels so icky and it's got such a bad rap, but I think if we are strategic about it
Mm,
and reach out to people with clarity of intention,
yeah,
and a clarity in our ask, what is it that we are looking for and why is that important to us,
yeah,
and being prepared to have those conversations and being prepared for rejection too. Maybe uh, the person you thought could be your mentor is not responsive or doesn't have the time or whatever the reason may be. Being ready for that rejection and yet going on with it and finding the next person that can do that for you. So that's something that I wanted to add to the conversation. But all of this is an exercise in inspect and adapt and sense and respond. All of that, those principles are, I see those parallels in that as well. Actually, that's a perfect segue into the final question that I had for you: is how might we as women lean into the core agile principles and practices in developing or strengthening our leadership stance? I know you've touched on some of these things, but wanted to hear that
yeah.
more about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so for example, I mean, as I've alluded to this before, um, women have this unique ability to bring people together, right? Whether
Mm,
you like it or not, this is something women are good at, and you got to accept it. And and women, they foster collaboration. That's what I mean to say. They bring people together. They foster collaboration, be it in your own home scenario. Just think about it. They are the people who bring people together. They are the people who foster collaboration. They are the people who build strong relationships within that close knit family. Now, if you scale that at your workplace, right? So the leadership skills are invaluable. right, in order to drive the project or program or even the organizational success. So
Mm,
essentially, if I have to lean on something, I lean on my own personal characteristics and
mm,
my own virtues as a human being, as a woman, and of course, if I have to dotted line kind of draw parallels to the agile principle or practices, if you remember, I think it's principle number 5. Okay, agile principle number 5, which says build projects around motivated individuals, which kind of
mm,
connects to what I began this conversation with. Give them the environment and support they need, and most importantly, trust them to get the job done. Now,
mm,
this is a very powerful statement which falls in line with the question that you asked, Meenakshi, because this is something which, again, go with an intent to your bosses, whoever, whichever layer you are in, whichever role you're in, then help them understand the intent that you're moving with this team. And that's where your boss, whoever that is, they should be able to give that support and the environment for you to thrive in, and most importantly, trust you to get the job done.
mm,
And
mm,
by that, what happens is, by focusing on that, on creating a supportive and empowering environment, uh, women in these leadership positions, in these positions, can trust in their own abilities and start delivering results, and that's very easily visible, right,
mm,
in a very short period of time. So I think these are the few principles that I emphasize, the importance of providing the right support to the team members, while also encouraging the autonomy or the empowerment, and trust in their capabilities.
mm. That is powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And what you said earlier on around the parallels between agile principles and the feminine aspect of leadership, when you called out empathy, communication, and intuition, and really, what I heard you say is that one of the ways in which we as women can be successful is really leading with our inherent strengths, doing more of what comes naturally to us as opposed to trying to fit into
Correct.
a model that really was not designed for us, to be honest.
Right.
And really leading with that. Um, thank you so much for sharing that and having this conversation with me. Um, and I want to invite you to talk about the upcoming event at APGI, the Agile Practitioners Group of India, because um, I will say this: last year was the first time I attended the event in Pune, in India. It was absolutely a fantastic experience, um, and I'd love to hear from you about the event that's coming up, and also a little bit, if you can hone in on the impact and contributions of the women of APGI.
100%. Yeah, sure. So let me give you a bit of a 30-second history on how we kind of started this, right? So it all began in 2015. It's about 9 years ago, where we three of us, uh, three like-minded people, if you want to call it that way. We just gathered in a place in a city of Pune in India, and then we said, okay, what makes Pune the agile capital of India? That was the objective, because we know there are a lot many agile activities that were happening in different cities in India back then, and not predominantly within the city of Pune. So we just got together as a family get together that day, and after lunch we said, okay, we're going to do something about this, and we're going to try and make Pune the agile capital of India. That's how it all started, really. And then we said, okay, we're going to name this, as a, obviously it's a non-profit community. and we came up with this name with a little logo of a tree. And if you can actually go to APGI online at some point, you can actually see that little logo of a tree and APGI written, which stands for Agile Practitioners Group of India. And the symbol, the tree, only indicates people. We nurture people. We as a community, we grow together to form those kind of which will enable us to yield fruits eventually. So there's slightly a background to the logo, but now coming to the conference, we've been doing these conferences, or mostly an annual get-togethers. Since then, we had to pause during COVID for 1 year, and then apart from that, I think this year will be the sixth annual conference, which again Scrum Alliance was very kind enough to be the title sponsors this time for us. They saw the appetite we have within the city of Pune, and they said, yes, we're gonna sponsor you for this event. So now we have the brand called as a Regional Scrum Gathering, which speaks volume for our effort that have gone in as founders and organizers. Now we still have another the conference coming up in the month of April. That's where you said we're going to have our little face-to-face catch-up next, which is on the 5th and 6th of April in Pune at Grand Hyatt Regency. Now, before I close this, I want to also let you know that we are predominantly driven by volunteers, right? So right from the day we incepted this whole thing up until today, we have been very cautious about DEI, which is diversity, equality, and inclusion. When I say that, we ensure that we have equal opportunities given to everybody, regardless of genders, and we have both women and men contributing towards this endeavor, and especially having women, as I said for the last few minutes, brings fresh perspectives, creative ideas, insights for us to curate these conferences better and better every year on year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is just a snippet of what I wanted to talk about APGI.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sri. Um, and I know that you are celebrating International Women's Day at the conference in your own way. So there is a you we want women and allies to join the conference, join us at the conference, and there is a special code that you can use for the registration.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So if people listening to this conversation can go on to our social handles, APGI on all the social handles, we've put in coupon code, or I can share with you, Meenakshi, you can drop it in your
Yeah, we can
social.
add it to the show notes later. Absolutely.
Fantastic. So
Yeah.
please utilize that opportunity and try and come in big numbers, because we really want these women who have got these mid-career breaks to really resurrect their careers. Coming into these
Mhm.
conferences will only open those venues for you. Start networking with people. We've got a networking dinner on day one, which is precisely eyeing on these few initiatives that APGI is it takes pride in carrying out every year on year.
Absolutely. And the volunteers and particularly the women at APGI, they are really a force to reckon with. And I'm so glad to have met them, and I'm looking forward to meeting them again this year. And I also wanted to talk about one of the something that you said, Shri, around what is it that us as women can do a little bit more of and a little bit better. And that reminded me of an offering that I am launching this year. And it's titled Unpacking Leadership as Women. And I'm very intentional about saying as women, because the focus is really on what is it that we as women can do to lead with our inherent strengths, what we are inherently good at.
Mhm.
And We exhibit more of the feminine side aspect of leadership, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's um, it's a sad fact of that we as women are forced to live and work in a world that was not exactly designed for us. And so that was the inspiration for this 6-week leadership development program that I'm launching in 2024. And the idea is that instead of trying to constantly force fit ourselves into leadership models that are nothing like us as women, and it's unfortunate that we are constantly taught and trained how to fit in, and these models really don't work for us. So this is a unpacking leadership as women is geared for early to mid career women, and I'm so glad you mentioned Shri, women that are looking at returning to the workforce after a career break for whatever reason. This will be a great program for such women as well. It's open to all early to mid career women. And the whole idea is to how can we do more of what we already do well and lead with our strengths and lead as women. And this is a program that is the outcome of my own 25 plus years of industry experience across India and US and in different industries, and my experience as a professional coach in more than 100 hours of coaching conversations with professional women globally. So this program is really designed by women, including me, and for women. And the whole idea is how to lead as women using our strengths. So the next cohort starts on April 17th. And I'm looking forward to whoever will join us. It's going to be in a small cohort of 8 to 10, max of 10 women. And it's a combination of group and individual coaching. And the focus is really on several of the topics that we touched upon today. So, how to lead with influence, how to delegate with confidence, and how to network with purpose. Those are the three key modules, if you will, learning modules. And it's a virtual program, so you can join us from anywhere. And I am a Gallup certified strengths coach. So the Gallup strengths assessment will be a part of this program. And that's also something that you'll walk away with. In addition to really learning some new behaviors, how to lead like a coach so that you can infuse trust and psychological safety in your teams, how to skillfully balance your focus between people and performance so that you can build highly engaged and high performing teams, how to network strategically so that you can intentionally recruit your personal board of directors. So, this is what you can expect to learn and start doing through this program. So, I'm very pleased to talk about this today, of all days. And you will send me a message, email me, find me on LinkedIn if you want to talk more and learn about this program. And I'll also add the links to the show notes along with the APGI conference links and the code. And the the conference is on April 5th and 6th, Friday and Saturday in Pune, in India. Um, and so, one second. Oh, we have Tiffany here. Hi, Tiffany. Thank you for joining.
So wonderful.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, so this has been a wonderful conversation, and it's so much to take away and so much to reflect on, Sri, for me personally, um, as a leader, as a woman who looks like I do and live where I live, as a woman in tech, as an entrepreneur. There are so much to think about and so much to do differently, and it's a bit nerve wracking and exciting all the same. Um, Parting thoughts, Sri?
Well, well, I would, I mean, whatever you're doing, right? So as I told you before, it's an extraordinary initiative. It's not easy for people to come out of that little closet, the nutshell that they are in. Now, what you're doing is to enable them to come out of it, and that would be the stepping stone for their success if you actually think it large. So
Mm.
I think you are the enabler for that to happen. So kudos to you and congratulations. Best wishes for your endeavor, which is starting on the 17th of April. So, for people who are listening to this conversation now, live and outside of it, please make use of this opportunity. Meenakshi is an incredible trainer and, most importantly, again, an incredible human being. So, just make sure you guys connect, you guys collaborate, and try and make the best of the opportunity that you have at hand. And again, follow me on LinkedIn. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any kind of again, if you think, oh, this person can help me, I can be another extra pair of ears to listen to you at any given point. If that can help you, you know, build your confidence and get into the industry and do what you want to do, right? So with that, I think I wish you guys all the very best, and thank you so much for having me, Minakshi.
Absolutely, absolutely, Shay. Thank you so much. And likewise, folks that are in India and who are able to travel to Pune from anywhere in the world, Sri and I both will be at APGI, the sixth annual conference. And this time, this is a regional Scrum gathering. So, all you women in Agile and women in tech, if you're watching this or if you'll watch the replay later, mark your calendars, April 5th and 6th in Pune, and you'll get to see us and meet us in person too. So, looking forward to that. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you for taking the time to um, catch the replay later. We hope that this is only the beginning of this journey of rewriting this narrative and really coming to accept the fact that masculine and feminine coexist in each of us, and that it's up to us to use our own wisdom to harness both of these aspects and be in a from a very situationally aware perspective. So personally, for me, it has been an absolute pleasure. Any opportunity to have a conversation with you, Shri. So thank you so much for being here today. And here's to not having to celebrate International Women's Day as a thing. Here's to hoping that this is the last one that we celebrate. And here's to co-creating a gender equal world. Thank you all. Take care. Till next time. Take care and be well. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.